What's up, everybody? Your buddy Miles here, and welcome to Shabuvi. Whether you've been here before or not, figured go over the premise again for you guys, a little refresher. But basically, Shabuvi is where I take a show, a book, and a movie, and I tie them all in thematically based on one common thread between all three bits of media. And as you can see in the fun little logo that my sister Deanna made, shout out Deanna. She also made the website. It's pretty killer if you haven't checked it out yet. So, an example, let's go ahead and say, if we have the book Wuthering Heights, we have the short-lived TV show Pan Am, and we have the comedy masterpiece that is Greta Gerwig's Barbie. And if we look at all of those and we check out a common thread, we learn that Margot Robbie is perfect. That would be the thematic bond that ties all of those together. Another thing that you guys are going to see about Shabuvi, apt that I just misspoke, is that there's no editing involved here. We're getting kind of a live stream kind of webisode deal here because I don't know how to edit and I don't care to learn because it's hard and the very notion of learning it makes me physically ill. So you might hear me spit on myself a little bit. It's might be gonna be a very human presentation here. But anyway, let's get into it. So, what are we doing this week? This week we're talking about superheroes. I said week. I'm not making these once a week. You guys are fucking crazy. Make them maybe monthly. Anyway, so we're talking about superheroes. They've been around for literally almost 100 years. I looked earlier today. The first comic book, the first superhero, is recorded to have been around in 1936. So we're coming up on 100 years. And that wasn't actually Superman. It was someone called Phantom. But anyway, why do we love superheroes? Why are they such a cultural staple? They're inspiring. The movies and content is typically very entertaining. And they've especially blown up in the last 25 years or so, in this past century, getting kicked off with X-Men and the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. He's still the best Spider-Man. I don't care what anyone else says. And then, of course, the Marvel Cinematic Universe freaking blew up and did its thing. And it really needs to stop doing its thing at this point, personally. But anyway, so superheroes are a major part of pop culture right now. And it's not just, they don't have to just be, popcorn content, even though most of the time they are. They can actually do a lot more for us. I need some water, guys. Is that engaging, watching me drink water? Anyway, so this month's topic is a symbolic salvation of superheroes. Basically, how the idea of a superhero can help people deal with personal, societal, and even existential crises. And we're going to go through that by examining the show, WandaVision, the movie, The Dark Knight, the best superhero movie ever, and the best superhero, maybe story ever in Watchmen. So let's go ahead and get it rolling. So first thing we're going to check out is WandaVision, which was actually the first bit of content, or one of the first, that was released after Avengers Endgame. After they did, Marvel did their whole 15-year build-up shenanigans and tied 22 movies together. That was freaking awesome, by the way. But it probably should have ended with Endgame. But anyway, I'm kind of excited that it didn't because it gave us WandaVision, which is awesome. And it's still the best bit of Marvel content that's been released after Endgame, in my opinion. It's pretty amazing stuff. And so the premise of it, and it's a mini series, by the way. If you want to go, I think it's 8 episodes. It's on Disney Plus. It's pretty killer. You might have to watch some Marvel stuff, but anyway, to understand it, but it's pretty awesome. But anyway, so the premise. So you have Wanda, our main character, played by Elizabeth Olsen, and in the whole Marvel MCU Infinity Saga, she loses her husband, Vision, who's an android, whatever, we don't need to get into that. But then after all these events, we end up in WandaVision, which sees Wanda living with Vision and a couple of their kids in this nice little pleasant suburban neighborhood. But it's a little like Stepford Wivesy because something is clearly off. People are kind of afraid of her. It's just a bit off-putting. The society isn't quite right. But of course, the biggest standout with the society is that it exists entirely within this realm of nostalgia. As WandaVision goes, pretty much episode per episode, we're basically hopping through decades. And it's really, really cool. The show's directed really well because it really captures the sitcom essence of each decade in every episode. So you have like a 50s episode, like a, like an All in the Family episodes. You have 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It's kind of like grungy and kind of like Boy Meets Worldy and stuff like that. It's awesome. And so by doing that, WandaVision tackles, the concept of nostalgia, which is basically, longing for a past time that you sort of idealize as a better time, which leads us to the main theme that WandaVision is tackling, and where this first example of how a superhero can help us sort of battle through something we're going with, which is grief. Because we come to find out, and major spoilers here, apologies, but if you've seen the Marvel movies, you kind of know already, Vision did die in Endgame, but Wanda, so just like wrecked by grief, created this little town, and where everything is perfect, and she has all of her perfect little sitcom lives, and she has kids that don't exist, and a husband that's dead but she's brought back. So she's really trying to live this idealized life and bring him back and bring this family back to have this idealized image of what her life could have been. It's ultimately really, really sad, frankly, for comic book material here. But ultimately, Wanda is able to just sort of like treasure her memories with Vision. And while she wishes that she could have moved on with him, ultimately she's appreciative of the time they spent together. It's actually a really awesome romance in the midst of the MCU and stuff. You kind of wouldn't think it between, like an android and like a witch. But it works really, really well. And this ability for WandaVision to like tackle grief and this like yearning for better times in the past is a really great example of how superheroes are used to sort of get through tough times. Another great example, the greatest example maybe, gotta nerd out about The Dark Knight, guys. It's just awesome. Like, if you haven't seen The Dark Knight, you're fucking crazy. Like, what are you doing? It's literally the best superhero movie ever. It's actually seen as one of the best movies of the 2000s, which even by like little fancy pants film critic people, like, if you would have told someone going into the 2000s that a Batman movie would be one of the best movies of the decade, and arguably of the century so far, people would have thought you were insane. But it really is. It's terrific. One of a bazillion different masterpieces from Christopher Nolan. He's just the man. But anyway, if you don't know about The Dark Knight, sequel to Batman Begins, second Christian Bale movie, where Christian Bale is battling the Joker. And the Joker, played by, of course, R.I.P. Heath Ledger, Oscar-winning performance, maybe the best film villain ever. If not the best film villain ever, then like the best of this century so far. He's like right there. Incredible performance, and the Joker's whole ideology is where we kind of get into our theme here of this sort of symbolic salvation of superheroes, because the Joker is an anarchist. And you'll hear him, he has some awesome monologues about chaos and, being an agent of chaos, and, why wanting people to break their rules and things like that, and their moral codes. Basically, he thinks that he thinks that people are terrible. Basically, if we boil it down to that, he thinks that people are awful. And because of that, he thinks that since we're all like fundamentally bad, like, why do we even bother living in law and order? And I don't know why I'm trying to sum this up when he can do it himself in a pretty amazing scene that a lot of you probably know. But we're going to listen to his theory on humanity right now.
Then why do you want to kill me? I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you? Go back to ripping off mob dealers? No. You complete me.
You're garbage. You kills for money.
Don't talk like one of them. You're not. Even if you'd like to be. To them, you're just a freak. Like me. They need you right now. When they don't, they'll cast you out. Like a leper. See, their morals, their code, it's a bad joke. Dropped at the first sign of trouble. They're only as good as the world allows them to be. I'll show you. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. See, I'm not a monster.
Oh, I stopped it too soon. Hang on.
Then why do you want to?
each other.
Ah,
I'm just ahead of the curve.
there we go. Killer last line. I had to go back for it. But anyway, so you hear the Joker's not too fond thoughts on humanity there. And basically, that's what Batman and Lieutenant Gordon, Gary Oldman, he's the man, have to deal with this guy, is him trying to basically break individuals and Gotham as a whole and society and basically call them out on their hypocrisy and say, you're not really a good person. You don't actually care about anyone else. And I'm about to prove it to you by putting you in a really, really tough, insanely difficult moral decision. But ultimately, what we end up seeing in The Dark Knight is with Batman at the helm and with the people of Gotham helping him, they prove to the Joker that they actually are good, that people are fundamentally good. Naturally, the movie does have some bit of a tragic ending because one particular character has a fall from grace. But overall, through Batman and his ability to try to really stick to his moral code, no matter what he has to do to achieve that code, is ultimately proof of humanity's goodness. And so this sort of shows how superheroes can help you deal with sort of like the chaos of life and like the chaos of society and kind of prove that people can be ultimately good. Honestly, it's a little inspiring, you know? It's a little cheesy, it's a little schmaltzy, but it can be pretty inspiring.
And why do you want to kill?
Oh, I always do the double tap, right? But that leads us to Watchmen. Now, talking about the chaos of life and dealing with the brutality of society, Watchmen is pretty dark stuff. But if you guys are ever going to read a graphic novel, you gotta read Watchmen. It's insane. It's actually on Time Magazine's list of the best 100 novels since of the past 100 years. It's one of only two graphic novels on that list. So, I mean, it's pretty important stuff. And a lot of people say that, like, when Watchmen was published, it was when comic books grew up. So it's pretty incredible stuff. And so the premise of Watchmen is it exists in this alternate reality, pretty much a dystopia of America, where like Nixon's won the presidency like 4 times in a row. Scary stuff. But and basically, there were superheroes who once like worked under government authority that would, be superheroes, do superhero things. But ultimately, they were outlawed just because they were like difficult to control, yada yada yada. So you have a few superheroes that have sort of gone rogue, including our boy Rorschach up here, who will go in depth with a little bit here in a second. But basically, one of them at this point is murdered. And so Rorschach tries to kind of bring the gang back together, the gang of superheroes, the government sanctioned team from back in the day called the Watchmen, to solve the mystery of the murder and the conspiracy behind it. So, where does this tie into our theme of the symbolic salvation of superheroes? Well, it ties into it because of nihilism. So, if you want to take the Joker's theories on like people and society and extrapolate that to just like the idea of existence, that's kind of what we're tackling with Watchmen. Basically, with Watchmen, and specifically with these two characters, we see Rorschach, who, like I said, is our protagonist, and we see the comedian, who is actually the superhero who's killed, and we get to know through flashbacks. These are two characters who sort of represent that theme of nihilism in Watchmen, which is just like nothing matters. No matter how hard we try, nothing matters. Nothing is important. Nothing is good. Nothing is bad. Like, who cares? Life is terrible. Life is a joke. They both use that pretty often. It's all a joke. Um, so pretty bleak stuff. And frankly, even though Watchmen doesn't end on the most redeeming note ever, it does sort of use this superhero point of view to show us that nihilism isn't valid, based on basically by showing us that everyday things are miraculous and just the mere like cogs of life are impactful enough to show that there is meaning in life. And again, I don't know why I'm talking. I'm just going to let a better guy talk, and I'm going to let Dr. Manhattan talk. And Dr. Manhattan is this blue guy back here. I'll go back. He's this guy right here. He's a radioactive man. He was a scientist. He basically got like vaporized, but then he came back as this like godlike, omnipotent figure that can like create life and destroy it and can see all of time at once. But he gets infected by this nihilism at one point, and he like leaves Earth, and he's like, I can't stand it here anymore. Like, humanity doesn't make any sense. Life is meaningless here. I don't get it. And so he's visited by his wife, Lori, who reveals to him how she was born. And so that's the clip we're going to watch from the somewhat terrible Zack Snyder adaptation. It's decent, but Dr. Manhattan's definitely the best part. But anyway, so after this character, Lori actually realizes that the comedian is her father, something she never realized before. She realizes it in this moment. Dr. Manhattan sort of realizes all the different tendrils of the universe that come together in human life. And it's pretty awesomely put to kind of show that sort of opposition to nihilism. So let's watch it here, though.
Will you smile if I admit I was wrong?
About what?
Miracles. Events with astronomical odds of occurring, like oxygen turning into gold. I've longed to witness such an event, and yet I neglect that. Inhuman coupling. Millions upon millions of cells compete to create life for generation after generation, until finally your mother loves a man. Edward Blake, the comedian, the man she has every reason to hate, and out of that contradiction against unfathomable odds, it's you. Only you that emerged to distill so specific a form from all that chaos. It's like turning air into gold. A miracle.
Pretty awesome stuff. Killer speech. So good. So good. This might be like the best part of the Zack Snyder movie. But anyway, so that sort of sums up how Alan Moore, despite the overall, the bleakness of Watchmen as a story, uses this particular superhero, the most powerful superhero, to show us that even in like the really simple aspects of life, that life has meaning, which is huge when you're talking about nihilism so often as you are in Watchmen. By the way, Watchmen is also a killer HBO show. They made a miniseries that's actually a sequel to the book with Regina King, made by Damon Lindelof, who made Lost and The Leftovers. It's perfect. I almost thought about doing just a Watchmen Shabuvi episode with the show, the movie, and the book. But anyway, check out the show too. But that's this week's episode, guys. Oh, Dr. Manhattan, shut up. That's this week's episode. So, thank you for watching. I hope it was awesome. And I hope, I know there's a lot of ranting and raving about how many superhero movies are on these days and yada, yada, yada. And they're not all like these stories. They don't all provide this kind of stuff for us. But at their best, superheroes can really provide, like I said, sort of like a symbolic salvation against whether it's personal, societal, or just existential funk. So if you dug this, which I really hope you did, and thank you for watching, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, hop on the website, check out some of the reviews, some of the other episodes. Not sure what I'm going to do for my next one, Let me know what you guys are looking for. I don't quite know where I'm going yet, but anyway, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys, and I hope to see you next time. Deuces.